83, and then the high Saturday at 85. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
64 at O'Hare, 67 Lakefront. Your next news update is at 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the Alpha Wealth Group, bringing the trilogy of estate, tax, and investment planning together. Visit alphawealthgroup.com for a free report.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The crude and rude President Trump. If only he was a little bit more polished, a little bit less incendiary. Yeah, there could be a renewed civility in our politics and usher in a spirit of bipartisanship where we can get real things done for the American people. That's what the bull jive artists in the D.C. press corps and in both parties, some, want you to believe. I think what's happened to Mitch McConnell over the last 24 hours is noteworthy on this front. This is not so much about Mitch McConnell as it is exemplary of the fundamental problem and misunderstanding, including by some, of the sort of, to borrow Roger Kimballism, the housebroken mascots of the Republican Party, like the Mitt Romney set. Mitch McConnell, as the Wall Street Journal editorial board refers to him, the most phlegmatic man in American politics. Right. Hardly fire and brimstone for Mitch McConnell, do you get? Is this somebody who is a rigid ideologue, or is he the consummate mechanic and deal maker? And yet, he has been accused of treason. That's what he was accused of by the left. There's no other way to put it. Dana Milbank, writing in the Washington Post, Mitch McConnell is a Russian asset. Let's call it what it is, unpatriotic. The Kentucky Republican is arguably more than any other American doing Russian President Vladimir Putin's bidding. That is an accusation of traitorous activity.
Right. Treason.
So Mitch McConnell is now a traitor to the country, too. He's been a sleeper agent all this time in the Senate.
And he's been called names in the past, Grim Reaper, Cocaine Mitch. But this upset him so much that he took to the Senate floor to defend himself.
This is all over his unwillingness to allow for unanimous consent in the Senate on a couple of Democrat-inspired election security bills. One would mandate the use of paper ballots as sort of a backup against hacking. And you could understand why Republicans would be opposed to that sort of federal mandate, since elections are mainly state and local concerns. Another would require campaigns to report offers of foreign assistance, which, has some appeal, and Democrats have been demagoguing that. But writing that into federal legislation, attaching criminal penalties, it's a little bit more complicated than it seems perhaps at first blush. So you can understand why he would be opposed to those measures, or at least opposed to unanimous consent rather than floor debate and discussion on those measures. And that's why he felt compelled to take to the Senate floor as he did yesterday.
Over the last several days, I was called unpatriotic, un-American, and essentially treasonous by a couple of left-wing pundits on the basis of bold-faced lies. I was accused of aiding and abetting the very man I've singled out as an adversary and opposed for nearly 20 years, Vladimir Putin. This is the state, Mr. President, of left-wing politics in 2019. It's like an inflationary crisis, but with outrage instead of dollars. These people have worn out the volume knob so badly that they have nothing left but the most unhinged smears. Welcome to modern-day McCarthyism. McCarthy-like tactics out in the open for everyone to see.
And the irony of the left decrying softness on Russia from Cold War warriors like McConnell. I mean, remember, these are the same people that were aghast that Ronald Reagan referred to the Soviet Union as the evil empire, but now they're Russian hardliners. In point of fact, as the Journal points out, it was McConnell who pushed for tougher sanctions on Russia than the Obama administration wanted. It was McConnell who supported the Magnitsky Act that's allowed the U.S. to sanction Putin and his cronies financially. He also supported the Senate Intel's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. But none of that matters because the substance is irrelevant. If you don't support what the socialists want, then you're a Russian asset. You're treasonous. Huh. And it doesn't matter if you're the most phlegmatic man in American politics, Mitch McConnell, or you're a bit more flamboyant, as is President Trump. It should be instructive. By the way, the other pundit he's talking about, in addition to Dana Milbank, Joe Scarborough, former Republican congressman, right?
Yeah, out of Florida.
Yeah, right. For more on this topic and a couple of others, we're pleased to be joined again by David Harsanyi, senior editor for TheFederalist.com, author of the book First Freedom, A Ride Through America's Enduring History with the Gun from the Revolution to Today. David, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
What about McConnell? And oh, by the way, President Trump rallied to his defense, too, and went on a rant about the Washington Post being fake news and so on and so forth. But, the customary things. But it was good to have for the president to have McConnell's back, and I thought it was appropriate for McConnell to push back as he did.
Sure, and but I sort of appreciate that they have an attack other than just calling you a racist now. Now they call you a traitor, so it mixes it up a little bit for us. But obviously, it's absurd. Obviously, the hysterics over, Russia hacking our election are absurd and just they're hysterical. So no one really believes Mitch McConnell is a traitor. Dana Milbank is. Let's just face it, he's one of the laziest columnists in Washington. He just sort of
That's really saying something.
Well, I mean, treasonous because of a policy disagreement. That takes, the political world in a whole new direction, don't you think?
Of course, it's really a disgusting smear, but all they're doing is stripping it of meaning. So because they'll overuse it now because they've upset Mitch McConnell. So now, of course, more hashtags will come. Joe Scarborough will push the same, thing. It's funny that after more than 2 years of peddling basically the same attack on Donald Trump, and even after it was debunked, you'd think that they would take a step back, but no, they ratchet up the same, smear. So there's really no way to fight something like that. I mean, you can stand up and make a speech. I mean, no one really believes it. No one believes Mitch McConnell is a traitor. No one with a brain. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think in the end, it's going to hurt them more because what he said about the volume knob on 11 or wearing out the volume knob is correct. I mean, I think people at some point are going to start to tune out all that stuff.
I got to say now with the hesitation that I may be accused of being a Russian asset by quoting Vlad Putin here, but Putin's response to this, got to give the guy credit for a sense of humor, even though he's a murderous dictator. I hate to laugh about it, but his response to this assertion that McConnell is a Russian asset, you can scour the four corners of the globe and you will not find a nation that would ever in a million years consider Mitch McConnell an asset.
Oh.
He said you will find that asset means a useful or valuable thing. The only part of that definition that fits McConnell is thing. But it's also instructive that unless this is a very elaborate disinformation separation campaign, that Vlad Putin doesn't appreciate Mitch McConnell as a Senate Majority Leader. And so that should tell you something about both gentlemen, shouldn't it?
Right. I would just quickly add that I hope he stops these bills altogether because they're federalizing elections. This is something Democrats have wanted to do for a long time. There is no reason to pass these bills. Elections are local concerns. In fact, some people argue, and I think maybe they're right, that when you start federalizing these things, you actually make it easier for people to hack broader parts of the country. It is ridiculous to force a locality to have a paper ballot if they don't want one. We're in the 21st century. I mean, at least that's my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right, but it certainly isn't a treacherous position to take.
I wanted to reference you're a very good and highly entertaining piece at thefederalist.com about the controversy surrounding Trump's tweets on Baltimore this week and Al Sharpton descending on that town to, I guess, improve people's quality of life in some material way. The point you make about the media's effort to rehabilitate Al Sharpton's reputation because he's a useful cudgel against Trump at the moment.
Well, I grew up in New York, and I was there for Al Sharpton's, most famous years, I guess. And I remember what went on, and I remember who he is. And, there are a lot of younger people now around, and they might not remember who he is. But the idea that, the same people who call anyone who they disagree with a white supremacist, meeting with this man, defending this man as a civil rights leader, he literally, incited a riot against Jews with anti-Semitic language at a funeral of a young boy. He started another riot years later at a Harlem shop where not a riot, just a massacre. And there's a long list of other just horrifying things this guy has said. He's a terrible human being, and it's just it's really it honestly is disconcerting that candidates for the presidency not only meet with this guy, but praise him as if he's Martin Luther King Jr. It is just disgusting. And for the same people who constantly are calling Donald Trump racist and white supremacist to do it, just shows that they're massive hypocrites.
What if anything, did you learn last night from watching the debates?
That there's a sane wing of the Democratic Party, but they have no chance of winning. Yep. I learned that, the leading candidates want to decriminalize border crossings, that they want to, give every illegal who comes over free health care, that they're for reparations, that they want to take over the private health care insurance market. I think they're making Donald Trump look like a moderate on policy, and that's just the truth. I just don't know. Maybe I've misjudged America how those kind of policies are going to work in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and elsewhere in an election.
What's your sort of handle? And I don't know that this is measurable at the moment, but your handle on things like the Baltimore controversy coming a week after the back and forth with the Socialist Spice Girls about his tweeting and the nature of his comments with respect to the electoral impact. I mean, crude and rude, perhaps, but he gets to sort of unassailable truths, and he forces people to pay attention to what has become of Baltimore and maybe an urban city near them. We would certainly level up Chicago for consideration. Do you think it's a net positive for Trump, or do you think that, as is the conventional wisdom, that this just runs the risk of turning off too many suburban women to make it worth it?
I'm unsure. I think that, most people are just used to Donald Trump, and I don't know that it changes many minds anymore. But the idea, I wish that the president didn't use that sort of language because, frankly, I just think it's about him in a way. Someone attacks him, he finds their weakness and attacks them.
Right.
But what he's saying was true, and people can get mad about it. But it's true. In Baltimore, I'm not too far from that city. I've been there, and it is like a war zone in many places, and it's a tragedy. It's an American tragedy. So he's right about that. And so I don't know that. I think that most people who aren't, very ideological or even very partisan know that it's true, and I doubt it's going to change their mind.